Probably help if I add everybody. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a slow start of Axioms on Trial.
It's very calming.
Yes, right. Yeah, just what if I just left it up for everybody to look at nothing and just created this real awkward moment for the audience? And
I mean, there are TikTok channels where it's like just literally a lava lamp. So
yeah,
and there's
true.
like 1,000 people watching it.
Yeah.
I never understood that.
You don't understand? We'll debate that at some other time. I mean, I'll explain why it's a big thing. Today we're gonna go over. I kind of want to just jump in straight into it. We're not gonna really probably dive into specific prophecies. That's probably gonna come. I'm sure those might get mentioned. This is kind of more of just the overall problems with prophecies or anything that you guys might want to add. But at least that's kind of the general topic that we're shooting for tonight. Anything you guys beyond that you want to discuss, or is that pretty much going to be the realm of what you guys are feeling tonight?
I have saved. Well, I gave it to Cease, but I have a philosophical argument that we can break down later.
Okay, sweet. That'd be cool. And Jeff actually gave me a book last time I went and saw him, so I haven't done my due diligence in reading that because the final's coming up, and I'm like just really stressed out. I'm trying to act as if I'm not. But I'm basically trying to reteach myself everything from this semester in a week. But I am going to get around to reading that, and then hopefully I'll incorporate what I've read in that and the more specific prophecy video. But you guys want to, I don't know, Cease or Jeff, you want to start it out? Or how do you want to start it out? What do you want? I guess one of you guys kind of take it away.
Sure. Yeah. Well, first of all, thanks for coming on. I've been excited waiting for this for a little bit. So one of the arguments that I hear most often on social media by theists is, how can you not believe when there is this prophecy and that prophecy? Like, this proves the truth of this religion. Meanwhile, these people never seem to be aware of the fact that all mainstream religions are making the same type of prophecy claims. All these religions have prophecy within their holy books, and they're all making the same argument. And so I wanted to take some time to sort of address why it is that this perspective and this approach to proving God is completely flawed and doesn't work. And I want to sort of attack that issue on multiple sides, and I want to get your guys' feedback on why you don't think it works, and then I'll give my response.
I just think it's another modification of the God of the gaps. It's like, well, we don't know, therefore it's God. Like, we don't know how they could have known these things, therefore God. And like, you look at other prophetic people like Nostradamus or Leonardo da Vinci, like, all these other minds that existed that made very accurate predictions. Where did they get it from? Like, if they're not claiming it's from a God, is it that God just hands this stuff out randomly and you attribute it to whatever you happen to believe in? Or, it seems to me that people, there are billions of us, make predictions and sometimes they come true. And if you're cryptic enough, then people later on can just bend it to meet whatever you want. Or in many cases, like with the Bible, you can just write it later and be like, we did that. Here you go.
Yeah, I think you can reconcile pretty much anything at this point. And I'm going to kind of get you two to do like a one-on-one on this, and then I'll chime in. Maybe hopefully I'll pull up some visuals or things that we can kind of discuss later on in the video. But that's the thing is, the last person I was debating, we had talked about Judas Iscariot and how he, his guts either burst out on the field of blood, I think in Acts 1:18, versus him actually dying. I think in Matthew 25, he hangs himself.
I thought he hit some rocks or something.
Yeah. So, well, in one, he basically, his entrails just kind of explode, and he just like falls forward. And so there's ways that people have tried to reconcile that. And it's kind of similar with the prophecy thing, where it's like, you could do whatever you really want it to do. It's like, well, there was a stick or a rod hanging out and the rope snapped. And so it spilled out his entrails or whatever. It's like you could always reconcile anything. And so that's my biggest problem with the prophecy thing, is it suffers that same issue where you can use language to make it do what you want, or because you are actually removed from the scenario, there's really no fact check on certain parts of it, on certain elements of it, because you can just kind of hide within the fact that it hasn't been shown necessarily to be true, or it can hide after what would be a post diction. But I don't know. I'm gonna take myself out, and you guys have kind of a dialogue with on what you guys think in regards to prophecies.
So
they're bullshit.
Done. End of show. So I mean that's my first thing is, most of these prophecies are very vague. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're expressed in such a way where you can interpret them in a variety of different ways. There's not this clear, and literature often is metaphorical like that, and language is ambiguous like that. And so it's not convincing that someone can take a paragraph and then, recontextualize it to support what they wanted to, and then claim that it's true. So that's my first contention with this approach. And I think, like, we were talking about, before the show, we have no way to verify that these things weren't added after the fact.
Yeah.
In fact,
I think you have people that will say, like, hey, the Bible so accurately predicted this, and here's exactly how they did it. And you take what they say and you ask, like, okay, so show me the scripture where that prediction was made, and you read the scripture yourself and you're like, what the hell are you talking about? Like, what you just described and what I just read don't match up, like, without some mental gymnastics. So, right. They can say that, the peace treaty in Israel is a prophetic claim that was given in the Bible. But, you actually read that stuff and, let's talk about context, because all of a sudden context doesn't matter with any of that stuff. So, it just fits the bill for what they're trying to sell.
But also for something like that, it's like, well, you have a 50-50 chance. Either you're going to have peace or you're not.
And guess what? If it doesn't come true, you have to just keep waiting.
Right, exactly. Until
it's never wrong. It's just it hasn't happened yet.
Right. So, I had a discussion with somebody on that, where when I pointed out that there were all these prophecies that didn't come true.
Yeah.
Their reply was, well, that doesn't mean anything because you need to just wait long enough. Like,
there's one specific one, and I can't think of it right now, but it's like the something about one of the cities would never be destroyed, and then the city was destroyed. So it's like that's a pretty damning one. You can't run out of time on that specific prophecy.
Right. So that's the other thing. That's the other thing is when these prophecies don't come true.
Yeah.
And if I'm not mistaken, you have a whole book on this.
Like Mike has it now.
Mike has it. Okay.
He stole it. He was at my house for like 20 minutes and he stole it.
I'm just thinking. When they don't come true, that gets ignored.
Yeah.
So it's just right. So they're just creating a barrier to where, it's a perfect example of confirmation bias. Like they only take.
Oh yeah. 100%.
Right.
Tyre. Someone he said, the city of Tyre or whatever, Tyre or whatever it is.
Did you want to address the specific prophecy that Daniel, whatever?
We could. About? Yeah, I mean, that was one we were talking about, Daniel 9:25.
Yeah, I believe that's what it was. Because that's
Should I read it?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
In King James, in God's word.
Right.
Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks, and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again, and the wall, even in troublous times.
Right.
The word of the Lord. So,
and that was used in a discussion I had with this moron on TikTok, who was saying, like, that to him is proof of the Christian God. And it's like, okay, number one, how low,
evidence.
how low is your standard of evidence? I mean, that's so embarrassing.
And I wanted to start, and I'll probably do this in the Discord at some point. I'm going to make a Google Doc, and that Google Doc will be basically me just making up a religion, kind of like Pastafarian has been made up, and just highlighting things that I think are important, commandments, and predictions. And whenever my predictions come true, I'm just going to take credit for it. And if they don't come true, I'm just going to erase it.
Right.
It's easy. It's easy. So that's what I plan on doing. And then we can reference it too when we're like, well, yeah, but my book says slavery is wrong. It says it right here. It's a better moral guide.
So no joke. I have a friend who, when he was in high school, as a joke, started like a sort of a pseudo cult, like a pseudo religion, and years down the line, actually met some people that had kept it going, had actually made it like a collective
thing. That's how the Pastafarian thing took off,
Right.
And it's got a pretty, I don't have the book near me, but it's got a pretty well thought out gospel of the flying spaghetti monster. It explains gravity. It explains global warming. All of those things were prophesized. So.
Yeah. But that's the thing. So for something like what you just read, one, how do we verify this wasn't added later on after the fact? Number two, that passage wasn't that clear anyway. It wasn't like it was completely direct. But let's say, because what I try to do is when I have these conversations, I want to try to give the person I'm talking to all the possible ammo that they might want. Let's say that I accept all the premises, that the prophecy was clear, it wasn't added after the fact. Like you were saying earlier, given the fact that there are people who don't claim to be talking speaking the word of God, who made predictions, and they weren't doing it from a supernatural perspective, how does one test for that? How do we go about, like you said, it's God of the gaps. We don't know how they were able to and also it's, for me, it's really the main defeater of this argument for prophecy is that essentially prophecy is like a blueprint of what is expected to happen. Like a lot of those people at the time knew what the stories were, right?
So what if I gave you this prediction? This is from history. This was written before the fact. Henry II. Okay, so this is the prediction. The young lion will overcome the older one on the field of combat in a single battle. He will pierce his eyes through a golden cage. 2 wounds made 1. Then he dies a cruel death. So what this is, and then what happened in the summer of 1559 is King Henry II of France lined up to joust, and 6 years his junior on the fields of France. And they had lions on their shields, and on their last pass, the lance tilted up and went right through his visor, splintering to pieces. 2 shards, one through the eye, piercing his eye through a golden cage, and one through the temple, lodged in the king's head. 2 wounds made, okay? He suffered for 10 days, and then he died a cruel death before dying in his own bed. That's a pretty accurate prediction made by Nostradamus, who never claimed a God, gave him this information.
Right.
How could he have known this? But then again, you look back at it. It doesn't say King Henry II of France. It doesn't even give it. It just says the young lion will overcome the older one. It doesn't, it could mean any. You have an infinite number of events from when Nostradamus put that on paper to infinity, where anything could happen that closely resembles this, and you just pair the two together and say, look, he predicted it.
Right.
It's not a prediction.
And even if it could be seen as one, we don't have an explanation for the the source of where it could come from. It. I could make up any kind of metaphysics. Like I could say some people have the strange ability to see into the future. Like they have visions of what's to come. And that could have something to do with the fact that in physics, the past, the present, and the future all exist.
Well, I think you have some visionaries too, like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. Like all of these people have profited from their ability to see the future.
Right.
So unless that's some sort of, supernatural thing, it just seems to me that some people are better at predicting business and making the right moves now.
In that context, I would say those guys are more sort of aware of human nature.
Yeah.
And here, let me post this comment. What would you say up to this? It's not just random predictions. The Old Testament tells the whole narrative that the people closest to Jesus clearly saw us talking about Jesus.
Well, that's fine. But what we're saying is that the people closest to Jesus, which we don't have the accounts of, thought that he attributed to these things, right? How am I supposed to verify that? Okay, so he was supposed to be born of a virgin. We don't know that he was born of a virgin. Just because the book said he was born of a virgin does not prove that he fulfilled the prophecy of the Old Testament. He rode into town on an ass. Well, I don't know that. We don't know that he rode into town on a donkey. Where he was born in Bethlehem. We don't. This is all, you've attributed this stuff to meet it. And it was written hundreds of years after his death. So of course the people were like, oh yeah, he was born of a virgin. Check that one off. It fulfills the prophecy. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And for those that would ask, why would people add these things later or create this whole narrative? Why would someone do that? Well, think, religion has always been about controlling society. And especially a religion that sort of appeals to those that are less, are less fortunate.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure.
So, yeah. Hold on one sec. How about this?
Tell Spartan to come on here and bring his best prediction, and we're gonna just absolutely destroy it.
Okay. You said you have. So you're gonna be right back for a sec?
Yeah, I'll be right back. Let me adjust my camera, and I'll be right back.
Okay. Hold on. There we go. Jeff will be back in a second. Yeah, so I'll continue this on what I was saying. No, but okay. So, well, some think it's about 100. Some think it's 50. For me, that's not really the relevant issue. What I have a problem with is the fact that a lot of these claims are not verifiable. Like the book is the claim, not the evidence. And even if we were to say that, okay, we have these prophecies, we know they're accurate, we know that they weren't added after. The issue here is that every religion makes prophecies. And so how could the prophecies found in one religion prove that religion to be true when other religions are doing the same thing? So the prophecies found in Islam can't prove the truth of Islam any more than the prophecies found.
Give us an individual prediction, because like what Spartan, give us an individual prediction. We'll look and learn together. Right. But the thing is that Christians will say, oh, there's 2,000 some odd predictions that Jesus fulfilled. And then you ask them to name one, and it's not something that can be verified, or you can verify it to be false. Then they give you another one, and same thing. And then it's, well, you don't have an open mind. And they exit the chat.
Right.
So it's just, there are a few predictions that I could say do line up. That sure. Don't have a date problem, that don't have any of that. But just like I just demonstrated with the Nostradamus stuff, it's not exactly clear. If there was a prediction, like somebody can make a prediction like, hey, 3,000 years from today, it'll be known as the year 3000, because I know what the calendar is going to say. And September 3rd, there's going to be a large fire in North America, which hasn't been discovered yet. And it's going to be in a major city that has 3 million people, and exactly 20,667 people will die. That's an exact prediction. Like, that's something to be validated. But if I were to say, hey, in the future, there will be some time in which people will die in a foreign land, and it will total hundreds in a fire.
Right.
Like,
these are things that...
Yeah, it's like there's clearly two different things there. And these predictions in the Old Testament are just not clear. One. Two, many of them can be just demonstrably shown to be false or mean multiple things.
And there's always, usually there's things that humanity has always faced. Like, why should it be impressive that the Bible predicted disease and war and conflict when we've been dealing with this shit for the entirety of human nature? So there's nothing impressive about...
Yeah, there will be wars and talks of wars. That's one of them. No shit. Like, right. How about this? There will be war. I predict in the next 10 years, there will be war in the Middle East.
I mean, Islam has a prediction about buildings being built.
Tall buildings.
Tall buildings.
And they got the Burj Khalifa.
It's like, and they're like, how could they possibly have known? Like, if that's your standard of evidence,
yeah,
it's
not hard to look. And I'm sure that Muhammad wasn't thinking 160-story building. What he was thinking was having taller buildings than, the other people had. Now, back in those times, two-story buildings just were not something that you saw because they didn't have the materials in which to make that work. So if you were to have a taller home than someone else, then you were of better prestige. You were of better money. So to say that you would be profitable, like my people will be profitable, we'll have 2-story houses, basically. That's what, within context, it's what it's talking about. But now you're just saying, well, yeah, but now look, you have the tallest building in the world. Well, up until this point, they were still claiming that prediction was fulfilled, first off. Right. And what about like 100 years from now, if they don't have the tallest building? Somebody else builds the tallest building. Then does that nullify the prediction?
Hello, Mike. You've returned.
Yes, I've returned. I've fixed the things in the background, and we should be good.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So there's a couple ways I would want to take this. You guys said a lot, and the virgin birth one is one of my favorites, just because typically the religious people try to, like, especially Christians, try to go back to the original language, and so that's what we should do here. We should go back to the original. In Isaiah 7:14, what is it that they are actually referencing? Well, it's Alma, right? And so I think it's Bethula. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. I don't know, but it's a Bethleuah, I believe. Bethula is what you would get for virgin. And so the first occurrence of the virgin birth within Matthew, which is being taken out of Isaiah 7:14, is actually, and scholars agree, has nothing to do with a virgin birth. It actually just means a woman of child-bearing age. And one of the guys I debated last time, he was, while we were debating, like, well, let me go search the original, like, while I was giving him, verses. And when he did that one, I mean, I saw his eyes kind of widen when he was looking at whatever his source was, because he was just like, well, I'm going to have to look more into this. And the more you look into that prophecy, you see that the most important prophecy of this religion is really nothing more than just a misunderstanding of Hebrew language.
Common with the way the message was transmitted.
Yeah.
It's so funny because I literally just had a conversation with somebody who was saying the word of God doesn't change. And so people's interpretations are just them trying to justify their own sin or their own, what they want to be true. It's like,
absolutely.
You understand anything about linguistics?
Yeah.
These things clearly have changed.
Yeah.
Everybody in the field, every scholar acknowledges that things have been added and mistranslated and retranslated.
But this is even a problem in Islam, who claims to have a book that's not been changed. Because
It's
even
just
if
tradition.
I gave them, okay, cool, you did a better job of keeping your book together because it's 500 years newer, and the printing press, and you have all these other things that were able to accurately replicate it, and you forced people to memorize it. It was very important to them to keep the book straight. Cool. The interpretation of that book has changed every 100 years, every 50 years. So you can basically make the book mean whatever you want. It's not a good way to transmit such a dire message.
We have all these denominations for every religion,
Yeah.
all of which claim to have the true interpretation or the true word of God.
Yeah.
And they all believe different things. That
Yeah.
right there is evidence that this can't be what they're saying. And again, all these religions don't have the same picture of reality. Christianity.
I still want to know how Nostradamus knew all these things.
Well, there's that, of course, but there's also the fact that Christianity and Islam can't both be true. So how is it they both have prophecy? I think I'm hearing an echo.
Yeah, I think you're echoing, Jeff.
No, I'm not.
Are you gonna? Okay.
Prophecy.
So even if we were to accept that somehow these prophecies were real and had happened the way they claim they do, how is it possible that they're found in two different religions who have a view of reality that is in contradiction? They can't both be true. So you're still left with, prophecy doesn't get you to the true picture of the world because they both have it.
And if a religious person were to say too that like, oh, well, my predictions are real and those are deceiving, those are deceptions,
right, then
how do you prove who's being deceived and who's not? Like, it's a complete clusterfuck.
Well, yeah, and that's
of
kind
information. If we're supposed to be, if you lower the standards down to where you accept these as predictions based on the linguistics that we were given from these books, then you open yourself up to a huge possibility of other linguistics that's going to cause predictions that you could possibly know or not know. It's not a good way to prove your God claim. I think you should stick to other stuff.
Sure. Well, it also kind of gets into the aspect of, because I've heard people say, you like this criteria of a future testable prediction or being able to, essentially just what we know is the best way of getting to truth in a lot of aspects that are dealt with in science. You kind of get this response, well, like this is a novel testable prediction, like that's what we're doing and they're coming true. But you don't in senses. And one of the ones that someone had told me recently was Ezekiel 30:12. I will dry up the streams of the Nile and sell the land to evil men. By the hand of foreigners, I will lay waste to the land and everything. And this is all despite the fact that the Nile there's not any evidence at all in history and in all of the geological strata that has ever happened. That there's ever.
You just gotta wait, Mike. You just gotta wait.
And that's what I was actually going to say was that Jeff had mentioned earlier that there's kind of these indefinite. There's no expiration date. It's like even if you had the expiration date, even if like you did come with that, there's already problems there. But once you don't have a very specific thing. Someone could say, well, that really isn't a prophecy. Like someone could go, well, that wasn't one. You're looking too into that. Well, that's the whole problem with all the
Christians can't agree on their prophecies.
Exactly. And
so what am I supposed to?
Exactly. So now it's in the idea of the prediction. Well, if we're not going to give the same credibility to every prediction that's within there, then like, how is it that you're deciphering which predictions matter, which ones don't? Is it the only ones that matter, the ones that seem to line up with reality for you, so therefore it is convenient for the case that you're trying to make?
And there's a lot of stuff that was removed that we just don't see in the Bible or other maybe Bible specifically, I can think of examples, but there were pieces and parts that were removed or altered because they didn't make sense or the stories were updated. Things right there, more accurate.
Right there, how could this be the perfect word of God?
Yeah.
When we have knowledge of these things, that there were aspects of the Bible that were removed.
Yeah.
How come this never gets addressed?
They don't know the history.
Right. And one other thing is, it seems pretty clear to me that the belief was that Jesus would return in the time span of a generation, not 2,000 years later.
It was within that age.
Right. So, I mean, that to me is also another issue.
If you actually take the writings that are attributed to Jesus Christ and break them down, he was a apocalyptic Jewish preacher,
Right.
and one that was calling for the end of times within his generation.
Right.
Yeah, and so, well, I want to kind of push back just a little bit, or not push back, but reverse back. So, with the Ezekiel 30:12 thing that I had listed, I kind of left it on. Anybody could say, well, is that a prophecy? Is it not a prophecy? It's just one kind of prediction thing there. But as someone who I love to read the text, I like to get into it. And so I'll put back up what I had on there, which is Ezekiel 30:12. I'll dry up the streams of the Nile and sell the land of the evil men, or to evil men by the hand of foreigners I will lay waste. And someone could dismiss that. But if you just kept going, or you corroborated more things in there, Isaiah 19, 1-8, God said the Nile River would dry up and the waters shall I think it's supposed to be fall from the sea. I might have mistyped that. Maybe it is fail from the sea. And then you go further, right? And you do Zechariah 10:11, and they shall pass through the sea of Egypt, and the waves of the sea shall be smitten, and the depths of the Nile dried up. And so now you sort of see a theme where you can't really deny some of these aspects that are becoming very prevalent within the text themselves. You're really only left to kind of just agree with it or say, well, they meant this or that. But I could keep doing this, right? It doesn't stop there. I could go Isaiah 7:1-7. I could go, I think in 2 Chronicles there's something I mentioned. No, I'm sorry, I'm getting two things confused. But regardless, you could find multiple things. So when you're doubling down on these predictions, I'm like, well, at what point, whatever gives you the chance to let off the gas on that? It's really simply just because it's inconvenient, because it's not true. And then we can look with the data, like, if the evidence is valuable to you for the prophecy and you're citing the evidence when it matters, but then I have geological strata that shows this has never happened. Like, this isn't, and your expiration date is forever. So if it did happen, like, you just get to claim victory, because from my perspective, that's just putting up a bullseye up on a tree and drawing the bullseye after the fact. And so,
what about all the things in the Bible and the Quran specifically that are just stupid? Like people living to be 900, ants talking incomplete sentences to people, the moon setting in mud, a worldwide flood, like all of these other things. Like, how could you be so wrong with all this other stuff if you're supposed to be prophetic?
Right.
Did God mess up a few times, or did he not get the prophecies right? Did we screw something up? I don't see how we get something so wrong.
And I love that people will say things like, the Quran talked about the universe expanding, and so it knew of the Big Bang. Are you fucking kidding me? One word does not account for the complexities of the scientific theory.
By the way, that word in Arabic too has 8 meanings. 8.
Right. So it's it's just,
you pick the one you want.
Right. It's just such a terrible. I think it's one of the weakest arguments, and yet it's one that it's used the most.
Quran 51:47. In the heaven we built it with craftsmanship, and we're still expanding. We are still expanding today. We know, is this correct? Well, if we're going to give that vague kind of a prophecy, and we just
how do they know that it's expanding?
Well,
what are they using to determine that the universe is expanding?
Well, even if we just grant it to them, then you're making cases for Hinduism in regards to the age of the universe and things of that nature, because they were way closer. And so I can't. It's like, when it works for you, why doesn't it work for the other? Because you're not the only one that potentially has come up with that prophecy.
They're being deceived, Mike, by the devil.
But it also, and I talked to Tom, I talked to T-Jump about this, and I think he disagreed. Actually, he did disagree with me, because he doesn't think it is it's more of a post hoc rationalization, which I would agree. But I think it's a Texas sharpshooter fallacy, where you're taking a cluster of data and just trying to kind of retrofit it into your conclusion, which I guess could be similar in those aspects. But it always seems like that is Islamic apologetics to me. And one book is just essentially, I'm going to find a discovery that science made and make the claim after the fact that that's the case. And so, yeah, basically a post hoc or Texas sharpshooter, or however you'd want to look at it.
The other one I often run into is the Bible knew that the earth was round and that it floats in nothing, in space.
It knew,
So
it knew it
gravity.
was round, but you're saying in Christianity, right?
Yeah, this is
Even though it had four corners.
Right, that's the thing. It's like you're picking and choosing scripture that you think you can refit modern times, when there's other passages that claim other things.
Yep.
And also, it's not empty space that the earth is, just hanging by a string on. Like, it's not. You're not predicting the theory of gravity or predicting any of these things. You're just using vague language to pretend like the science and the text go together when that's not the case. But
Yeah, I think I went black there for a second. I'm sorry, guys.
you're good.
I predicted that.
You predicted.
At some point in the future, Mike's Wi-Fi will cut out during a show.
I really hope not. I have a technical check with the ACA tomorrow, and so I really don't need any of those prophecies coming true.
They're very thorough, by the way.
I know. I have a feeling that I won't be on Truth Wanted because they're gonna be like, "Yeah, you didn't cut the technical bill. Like you need to work on your equipment first." And then
Let me make another prediction. The Mississippi River will run dry at some point in the future.
Yeah, and so then if it happens, Jeff is right, and do we not agree? Yeah, we just.
I made that prediction. How would I know?
Yeah,
how would I know that 3,000 years from now there would be an earthquake that redirected the Mississippi River?
Maybe you're God that you've been lying to us the whole time. Undercover as an atheist.
Can I shift gears for a second and entertain you guys with a story that I found pretty fascinating?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so have you guys ever heard of? I don't know if I'm saying his name right, but Edgar C. Wisenant? No. I think I'm saying it right. Okay, he was a former NASA engineer and Bible student that predicted the rapture would occur in 1998, somewhere between September 11th and September 13th. He wrote a book called 88 Reasons Why the Rapture Will Be in 1988 and on borrowed time. Ended up selling I think millions of copies or a couple 100,000 of copies, things like that. And so, well, obviously his prediction didn't come true, right? But I thought it was kind of a funny thing to mention because people believed him. Just this guy. I mean, this isn't just a prophecy. It's not entirely analogous to the biblical prophecy idea, but this is a prediction that somebody's making, and people just bought into it. People sold their farms. Apparently, according to Bart Ehrman, he said he had students whose parents were selling the farm because of how much they bought into that. And so even beyond the biblical or religious or spiritual, I mean, you just have someone knows this is just a person and their interpretation of something else, taking a prophecy idea like a rapture or anything like that outside of it into their own head, and people will still buy into that. Right. And so it just kind of shows you on a psychological level, a more a level that I would be more interested in regards to science on a neurological level, why that's the case. Why is it that we see people that so easily are buying into this kind of stuff, even just outside of the text in somebody's opinion of the opinion. It's a crazy concept to me that fascinates me. And I thought that was something people should go out and check out that book, and you should buy that book and read it. Maybe he's you help him out. I don't think he's doing too well nowadays, probably, but he passed away in 2001, so yeah, he's definitely not doing okay anymore. It would have been pretty interesting if he could predict that, too
his death.
Right? Yeah, his own death.
I can predict my own death.
He predicted all of ours, so but failed at that. But yeah, so I mean, you could go down the line in a lot of these. The fall of Babylon and Damascus would be destroyed. Egypt and Assyria will convert to Hebrew religions or things like that. You can go down these lines of things that that people can predict, or I think you guys went over the destruction of the temple, right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where it's like, man, those would be impressive. Those would be really cool. But if it wasn't for the fact that it's more indicative of a post-diction than a prediction, then especially in those specific things, now we have people that are saying, well, it's when the temple's rebuilt and someone goes inside of it, basically like, all they got to do is like walk inside and declare themselves basically like the Antichrist, I guess is kind of how that works. It's really weird.
The thing is, though, like 2020 for them is like the worst year ever. Like, oh man, 2020 is like, this is the end times, guys. It was predicted. When there were many times, like World War II was worse than this. World War I was worse than this. The Civil War was worse than this. The Black Plague was worse than this. Like, there were so many things that were worse than this. You're living in a time where people are living longer. They're living better lives than they ever have, even in spite of Corona. You still got your cell phone to make your little TikTok videos and look like a pretty good meal going on. Like a lot of people in Europe didn't have that during World War II, and millions of people died from that.
Yeah, this is perfect.
What's a better Antichrist? Like, I can't think of a better one in history.
No, yeah, right, and this is perfect confirmation bias. Like they ignore reality and take bits and pieces of things to reaffirm what they want to be true, rather than what they have good reasons to believe is true. It's like on every level prophecy fails because we can't actually validate the claims that they make. A lot of these things are added after the fact. There are people who have made predictions who never claimed to be religious. And even if we were to accept all their premises, you have multiple religions, which can't all be true, which all make prophecy. So nowhere does this argument succeed in proving the truth of any ideology. It fails at every turn. But if anybody's listening to this and wants to send us prophecies to go over, whether now or some other time, feel free.
I think Mike W. Made a really good comment about my picture. This is literally somebody proving a claim right here. That's the picture. I brought this specifically for this for tonight.
Yeah, that's great.
Because that's what they look like. They're like, on a Tuesday, if you look at it on the third week, what they're talking about is, if you read the first letter of every word in the New Testament, it builds this. Like that's the depth they're going to.
Well, also I would say too that a lot of the claims that are being made aren't improbable things, right? That's a criteria I think that needs to kind of be in this if we're going to develop this into something that's worth looking into. Like the one thing that I would want to give them is like can it at least be a very improbable thing? And I'm not just talking like
the sun will rise in the west and set in the east.
Well, so I would say the destruction of a temple or cities, or maybe I would give you a river drying up like the Nile, but even then it's like, I mean, is that prediction if it happens and it comes true? It's like that's just such a weird thing that a thing that could happen that you predict.
The moon's going to turn blood red.
Yeah, right.
They've already found rust on the moon.
That's the new one.
I heard soon. Yeah.
That's the new one now. And
even though rust is orange, not blood red, and the moon will never turn orange like Mars, fine. You found a small piece of rust on the moon, and now the entire moon is turning blood red.
That's just ridiculous.
Yeah, but so I would say that like it can't really be an aspect of something that if you had something that you could categorize in the likelihood of happening just anyway, then I don't really know what's great about that. But if it's vaguely accurate too, then it's like you have every little bit of the pieces that aren't really quite fitting together. It would be a miracle to me if you could actually find an example of something that isn't just something that could just happen on its own naturally. None of these are actual prophecies that couldn't just happen on their own. Like maybe the virgin birth, right? Like that's you got something in that one, but then you're like, oh, the language, you just didn't understand what the word meant. So you just had the wrong idea of what they were even saying would be the Messiah in the first place. And so for me, I just really would like someone to give an example of something that's not, hey, well, the universe will expand, or these things that we just see naturally, or I mean, maybe not, full on first try, but we can see and have a natural explanation for. That to me would be something, but I don't even know of a prophecy that's like that.
And also, but how
Nostradamus predicted Hitler?
Huh?
Nostradamus predicted Hitler.
Oh, I'd be interested in that.
Let me read it for you, and you tell me.
There will be a bad guy that will kill people, or
no? Here's the prediction. From the depths of the west of Europe, a young child will be born of poor people. He who will by his tongue seduce a great troop. His fame will increase towards the realm of the east.
That's pretty vague. That's
better than any biblical prediction.
That's about on par with the best biblical prediction, I would say. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just a very.
Hitler was born in West Europe to poor parents, came to power through his speeches.
Yeah, I even if like we had something like that for Christianity, it'd be anybody could predict that. That's not incredible to me at all by any stretch of the imagination. That's like, hey, there'll be a bad guy and his parents will be poor and he'll live in this location. Cool.
What about this one about the atomic bomb?
I could have said that then. Yeah, sure.
Maybe you're not convinced yet. How about this one?
Did they talk about fission or anything like that?
Near the gates and within 2 cities, there will be scourges, the like of which was never seen. Famine within plague, people put out by steel, crying to the great immortal God for relief. Atomic bomb, clearly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's full proof. Yeah, no. To be serious though, it's like if Quran 51, if we could unblock you on TikTok. I don't think I've blocked anybody on TikTok. I don't even know if I know how.
I like when people accuse me of deleting their comments on TikTok, and I'm like, I don't even
know who that is. So
this username was the name of the argument Jeff, that you sent me last night about characteristics, right?
Yeah, I don't know who that is. Sorry, bud. I'd unblock you, but I don't know who you are. Nor do I really care.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So Spencer, we should go. He sent an argument to Jeff that I think is supposed to be like proof of God.
I'd love to hear it.
And yeah, so you want to do it now, or is there? Do we have anything else to add to prophecy? Because I think it's the easiest argument.
Subject.
No, that's why at the beginning I stated I'm going to specifically do a video with Cease later on, and Jeff, if you want to come back on and do this one, we can. We just kind of impromptu put this one up to just talk about. We're going to do one where we actually dissect and go through them.
Yeah, we need people to send in the predictions so that we can destroy them.
Yes, exactly. So that's actually even a better idea, because I was just going to kind of list the popular ones. So give me
give the best,
or I'll post a video on TikTok or YouTube or whatever, all the social media, Instagram, all those kind of stuff, and try to get people to send me stuff. Those atheists that are watching that are crapping on TikTok, don't, because I've met actually all these people through this. I've got to hang out with people. Dude, Jeff gave me some jackets the other day and books. So if anything, I've gotten monetary value out of this. So that's all I care about. No,
jackets and books.
But you guys should go on there, because there's actually a lot of views, and start making content and help help the battle for critical thinking. But anyway, yeah, we could move on to that if you guys like. Just conclude this.
Only thing is, I can't post it in the chat because you sent it as a screenshot, but I can read what it says.
I put it in the private chat.
Oh, you did? Okay, so read it, and I'll pop it up on the screen for people.
Okay, what you sent in the private chat is a little bit different, though.
Oh, it is?
A little bit. So we can do both, but I mean, it's more or less the same thing, but it's slightly different.
Or Jeff, you could screen share it and I could pop it up on the screen. It's up to you.
I mean, you this is your part. I don't know anything about it.
So yeah, so I'll just start
I need
reading
it
this.
explained to me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I must have misheard.
No, Jeff. This is the thing you sent me last night. This is what it says. Premise 1. There is no difference in the material world without secondary characteristics. Premise 2. Secondary characteristics are dependent upon minds. Conclusion 1. Difference in the material world is dependent upon minds. Being, as such, requires difference. To be is to be something particular, but this implies X as opposed to Y. Every this implies a that. In simpler terms, difference is required for being. Conclusion 2. Therefore, the being of the material world is dependent upon minds. Before humans existed, the material world existed. Unless modern science is a massive illusion, and it is not a massive illusion, there must have been and continue to be an existing mind for whom these material processes and phenomena exist. Conclusion 4. Everything we can differentiate comes from what we can experience.
There's already problems with it.
Of course.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a problem from the second premise. Everything we can differentiate comes from what we experience, and everything existed. This means that there's an infinite mind who experiences all. This infinite mind is God.
The structure of its conclusions and premises are arbitrary as well.
Okay, so Jeff, you just sent me the material.
Just get the rest in there so we have it.
I can try to put it up on the screen here, but it's probably not enough characters.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
It's kind of the issue. So I'll put up the first part of it.
Yeah.
And this is only part 1, everybody. So don't freak out if you wrote this. And all right. Anyway, so could I just mention something that was immediately wrong to me?
Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if C saw it too, but in premise 2, secondary characteristics are dependent upon minds. First off, we have to kind of define what do you specifically mean, because when you say are dependent upon minds, like for us to, I guess also we'd have to define what you even mean by secondary characteristics. I would assume that they're referring into like universals and particulars. Is that kind of what you got, Cease, out of that?
Yeah, I assume that's more or less what they were driving at.
Sure. So if you're talking about secondary characteristics, maybe like redness or blueness of something, like I already deny that type of a concept within things. Like
I don't see how that's dependent upon mind.
It's dependent upon me to describe it, perhaps, but but not for it to be instantiated into the universe.
It exists outside of my understanding of it.
But even if that was the case, if we're going to go with his argument, it's a fallacy of composition or division, depending on how you look at it, because it seems that he's saying, based off of this small part, if that was the case, if these things were dependent upon our mind, then everything must be dependent upon an overarching mind. You can't, that type of logic doesn't flow. You can't just take a part of something and extrapolate to its whole based upon a very small part, especially if it's something that is the creator of everything, as opposed to like using us and universals in particulars. That to me just seems like a gross misuse of logic at that point, or so you're just taking a giant leap for what you're not accounting for.
This is the exact same mistake that people make when they're using the modal ontological argument, where they're not understanding the difference between the description of a thing and the thing itself. The description may be dependent on minds. The experience of color may be dependent on minds. But that's nothing to do with what exists objectively in the universe itself. Whatever the characteristics that make one object different than another exist regardless of whether or not I'm there to observe it and then make the claim and make the description. It just so happens that because I have consciousness and then I engage in the world, then I can apply these categorizations. but but there's also something, a lot of the stuff isn't even inherent to the thing itself. Like a table, has a use, right? Like I use it to put things on it, but there's nothing inherent about a tableness that exists as a form outside of this is an abstraction. Like I could use a counter to put stuff on it. It just happens that I happen to call this table and call something else that could be used the same way something else, because language is useful in that way.
Well, that it's also kind of weird in the sense of that, like, you would have to be consistent. Like, right, I would have to say that this Sega Genesis cartridge, like the language, the logic that we use to describe it would be like an intrinsic property of it. Like, right, like the word game would somehow be intrinsically a part of the thing if you're using that. Like, wouldn't you have to? That's always my perspective. Is like, wouldn't you have to extrapolate if you are taking this as prescriptive that then other forms of logic, whether it be language or something like that, has their descriptors are also somehow part of like this intrinsic property of the item? Like, isn't that what the argument even is in the first place?
It's complete nonsense. The secondary characteristics are not dependent upon minds. The description of the characteristics are dependent upon minds, but not the characteristics themselves.
Yeah,
it's just
it's
not understanding
territory.
Yeah, it's not understanding the role of language in that, how that plays into these issues. So yeah, it's just not a good argument at all. I don't know if the guy that wrote this is still in here.
I sent it to him, telling me we're going to talk about it, so we'll see.
Okay,
he might be lying in wait.
So, premise 2, so secondary characteristics are dependent upon mind. So I would say no, to kind of go with what Cease is saying. If you're referencing the secondary characters being universals, redness, blueness, tableness, whatever you do, I reject that idea entirely. So I don't think that those are abstract concepts that just are descriptions that we come up with. Same way that I would reference logic, identity, non-contradiction, excluded middle is the same, or like the number 9, or language. So, and that's way more obvious for me as somebody who, initially has gone to school for programming and design and learning C++ and Java and seeing different languages that can do the same tasks or describe the same kind of aspects of whatever the combinations of ones and zeros would be in machine language. Then you see that there are multiple ways to describe the same reality of the thing. And that's all you're getting in there. And it's apt that it is called logic. And it's funny too, because within like programming, there are all these kind of like particulars and things where I found it easier for me to remember based on these types of philosophical arguments, because it's like, wow, this even fails when you apply this to like a set of logic like programming. These types of arguments wouldn't even work in that regard. But to sum up real quick, yeah, descriptors would be dependent. The actual characteristics that you speak of are being dependent upon minds aren't actual things. They don't actually exist. Redness isn't a thing. That isn't a quality that is like some thing. There are physical things or the perception that is involved with that, or the description that we.
Yeah, the rest of the argument continues to just make the same mistake. Like this idea of difference. The description of the difference is dependent upon minds. The difference itself is not. So it's just the same mistake again.
Well, even though premise 2 is flawed, and then conclusion 1 does not follow, the difference in the material world is dependent upon minds. So what does that mean? The difference in the material world is dependent upon minds? No, because if say we just had a world of just a triangle and a square, the fact of identity, or let's just like use I know that people don't like possible world arguments, things like that, but if we just use the example of the world before the emergence of minds, those objects and those relational behaviors within reality, they still exist. So those differences within that have nothing to do with the mind. It has to do with just simply the relational behaviors within reality. Now we categorize those relational behaviors. That's how our brains work. Everything we do, we operate on categorizations. I mean, just think about getting an 89 on a test versus a 90. There's a one number difference there that is categorized I'm sorry, let's take this further back, a 69 versus 70. There's a categorization there between failing and passing, depending on your grading system. That's how our brains always work. They categorize.
I better get a bump. I better get that 1% bump.
Well, and it's so hard.
A teacher fails me, I'm going to be pissed.
And it's really hard for people to kind of get out of this mindset of how we categorize things and describe things. So the difference in material world being dependent upon minds is only true in the aspect of how we describe things, not in the way that reality is. It doesn't care about us. It doesn't, like, determinism being true is not dependent upon me existing or the emergence of my mind. It is.
Your all caps guy in the comments, that's the buddy with this premise.
I can defend.
So he says, and then.
Sorry, I'm on my private chat, so I didn't see it. Sorry.
No, it's good. Oh, by the way, I did fail Algebra 3 my senior year by 1%.
Oh, I failed algebra. The first time I went to school, I failed it.
It was an elected class for me, but the teacher was an asshole. And,
I was bad at school.
You know who you are. You're watching this. If you're one of the 10 people watching, I hope you have a nice life. Failing me over 1%.
I can't
You're a
tell
terrible teacher.
I can't tell if this guy is being serious or is he trolling?
I thought he was being a poet with this question. What's the point of saying something is red or blue with no eyes? I don't really know what that means, but I assume you're saying, like, what's the point of describing something if you didn't have eyes? I don't know
what that means.
I think he's like trying to get to the argument.
Hold on, I just put it in the private chat what he was trying to say.
I prophesize that he will talk about the example of the woman who's never seen anything, and then she comes out, has to describe colors. I think that's going to be the example. I think that's what I'm prophesizing.
How do you describe the color blue if you've never seen it?
Yeah, that whole thing.
I remember having that thought at age 8.
Yeah,
and thinking it was,
it's like the same thing as like if somebody's blind, right? It's kind of like the rationalist empiricist arguments. Like someone's blind and they have shapes in front of them, and they feel the shapes. Like one's a square, one's a circle, one's a triangle, and they can feel them. If they get their sight restored, will they know without touching it which one was which based off of like their senses? And I think there's like problems in the way that people try to think about those kind of concepts based on how we use language and based on how we kind of describe things.
So I have no idea what because you just saying to me what you said on the Discord. I have no idea what that means.
Yeah, let me read it for you guys. The conceptual content of the concept of sound wave is conceptually sense dependent upon heard sounds as such. By sense dependent, I am referring to an epistemic relationship between concepts. Concept Y is sense dependent upon concept X. If one cannot understand or grasp concept Y without understanding or grasping concept X serves as the underlying and irremovable foundation of concept Y and cannot be abstracted away or isolated from concept Y. For example, I could not understand the concept of left-handedness without understanding the concept of right-handedness and vice versa.
I think my prophecies slightly came true there because I think that's pretty much what I was saying was this not understanding concept of So what was repeat the last thing about the left-handedness? I'd like to use that.
And the concept of left-handedness without understanding the concept of right-handedness and vice versa. So you cannot understand what it means to be left-handed without understanding what it means to be right-handed.
And what relation would that make his premise to true is what I'm not understanding.
In his own mind.
Yeah. So like basically all I'm hearing, and I apologize to the guy because I have to look at what you're saying, especially when you're using X and Y and Y entails F. Like that kind of stuff you have to really look at and kind of make sure you're getting right. I'm not seeing the connection there, but then I'm also wondering like, cool. So I don't have the concept of that, but how does that imply any secondary characteristic that is inherently descriptive?
And where do we get to the God claim?
No,
we're so far away from that.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with a lot of philosophy is that you're kind of in the waiting room before you
right. Yeah. Can we get to the real argument?
You ever get to see the doctor? You're just kind of like the nurse is just like, hey, how about this? I don't care about these things. I want to get to the specific thing.
Did you sign the paperwork? Did you read all the paperwork?
Yeah. It's like, I just want to see the doctor. That's all I want to do. That's why I'm here.
I don't want appetizers anymore. I'm ready for dinner.
Yeah.
There's two other issues here. there's a difference between saying that the phenomena of experiencing color is dependent on minds, and saying that color is inherent to the universe as a whole. Like, we are part of the universe, and therefore there are phenomena that come along with that. But that doesn't mean that the rest of the universe is dependent on a mind, just because there are aspects of it that are. And so that's the first issue. And the second is that there is nothing about experience of color that tells you specifics of what's actually going on neurologically in terms of physics. Like, we don't know what's happening in our brains when we have an experience. Like, the experience itself doesn't tell us all that additional information. Oh yeah, he wants to come in.
Yeah, I was gonna say he can schedule if he wants. I can't, unless CC want to have a conversation. I got so much stuff with school that I can't focus on stuff like that at the moment.
I mean, it sounds like a one-on-one argument.
But if it is a one-on-one thing and you guys want to do that, I have no problem.
I said 101.
How do we? Short.
Oh, I thought you said a one-on-one. I was like, I mean, that's actually probably better anyway too.
If you want, I can send him the same link you sent me.
I'll leave that to Cease.
So let's do this, because I can't do this all night, but I can do it for like a half hour, 40 minutes.
Yeah, we can go till I can stay in for the next 30.
Yeah. So have him come in. Send him a link. Have him come in.
Cool.
I'll do this for a half hour, and then if we don't have time,
then we schedule.
We can schedule, and he can come back, and that's fine.
Cool.
I mean, he just repeated the same thing that.
But without secondary characteristics, nothing would exist. It's a simple ontological.
Oh, sorry. Ontological identity.
Identity. LOL. LOL, guys.
But yeah, he's confusing two things.
Loyal.
Is this like a person? Do you think that this? I'm just making a prediction. Maybe this is their first semester in college, and maybe they just.
I don't know.
I after what happened with, I'd hope I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt, but what happened with John Anthony's stream, inviting a random person on when they posted something they shouldn't, and almost got their account banned.
He said he wants to schedule, so he's gonna. Okay. I told him to email you guys and gave him the email address. They can do that.
Let's just do that. That's probably smarter.
Yeah. Hold on, guys, real fast. After this is one thing that, like, I really wanted to do this show where we have people randomly come on, and we might do that. But what has turned me off from that is John Anthony had a situation where someone came on and they played porn on the thing and almost got his channel banned. And I'm like, I don't want that to happen because there are trolls. And so I really do want to schedule and vet people. Plus also we have like professors and things like that come onto the show. We've only done 17 episodes and we've had 3 professors come on the show. We want to keep it like that. We want to keep it respectful. And I want to vet people. I don't want put someone on here who spent, hold on real quick, 10 messages going, unblock me on TikTok over and over again.
Yeah, but those are entertaining, Mike.
They are, but I try to maintain a little level of, I mean, I don't look very professional, but I try to maintain a little bit level of professional and not like someone's coming in, typing in all caps. I want to vet them.
You can run, if you run it through OBS, you can do a 50-second delay.
But because he wants to schedule it, I think that's perfect. And that actually lends credit to me thinking that he's serious about having a conversation. So I appreciate that.
Again, we went through the argument. So you defend a premise. You're not defending anything because you
look at him. He's a sweet old man.
By the way, if that's actually him, he can come on anytime he wants because he's adorable. All right. No,
he looks like the Colonel's uncle.
You are not understanding the relationship between the description and the thing itself. So I can acknowledge that how do I say this? The things have a difference or an ontological difference. But that's not dependent on our experience of it and our description of it. That's secondary. It also depends on your perspective because there are there are religions and there are ideologies that actually don't think that those differences exist, and they think that everything is one thing, and that the separation of the one thing and the other is an illusion. I'm not saying I agree with that. I think there are problems, but the difference can be retained without ever having to be a mind describing a difference.
Yeah,
but Mike, did you unban him on TikTok?
I don't know who he is on TikTok, but I said in the message, I said, send me your username and I'll unblock you, but I don't remember blocking.
Don't worry, he sent me a message earlier today that was like, what do you think about my argument? And I was like, who are you? And he's like, check your messages. And I like go back and he sent me a message like a week ago. And I'm like, yeah, I completely like ignored that because it didn't make any damn sense. Secondly, you're not the only person sending me messages that wants to argue about something. Like, just be clear about who you are. It makes it a lot easier for me.
So again, to this statement, none of that requires a mind. What you're talking about, all those things can be ontologically true without a mind being there to observe it. You're confusing the description for the thing itself. It's as simple as that. It's true that the description of that difference wouldn't exist without a person describing it or a mind describing it, of course. But that's nothing to do with the thing itself existing as a thing itself, independent of the person experiencing it or describing it. That's like saying the building outside doesn't exist because I'm not there to look at it and describe it.
Yeah, a lot of this, it's funny because a lot of times I'm on Discord and people have these conversations. I'm like, are we really going back to if the tree falls in the forest type of thing? Because it's almost kind of seems like, and I know that's not their position necessarily, but it does always kind of feel like this is the level of that where it's like, if you're going to argue this and you're going to say that these things are beyond just descriptors, then the description for, guitar, then that means that somehow has an inherent property within the guitar itself. If you want to maintain consistent with your argument, that I feel like that you would have to hold that position. You would have to hold the position that the word bottle, the description for bottle is somehow intrinsic to the property, and that gets worse when you introduce things like secondary characteristics or universals and saying like redness and blueness, because now you kind of are, in my opinion, doubling down.
I do have a question for you, Mike.
These properties. Yeah, what's up?
If a tree falls on an anti-vaxxer in the woods and nobody is around to apply essential oils, do they still get autism?
Wow.
Yeah. So again,
he wants an answer on these, by the way. So I think.
But okay. So
the one
again,
above, I'm sorry.
Wait. Good. Bring that back.
Yeah. Sorry, I haven't been paying attention to the comments. I'm sorry.
It doesn't mean that these properties aren't there without a mind. It just means you can differentiate atom X and atom Y without a mind. Well, of course, for us to be able to differentiate something, we need to have a mind to differentiate it. Like, yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that there needs to be another mind, an external mind.
That's the composition division fallacy. That's
for us to be able to do.
All
we need is our mind.
But worse than that, it's like. So it's still a composition division fallacy in the sense of like our minds are needed. Like, I don't know how you get to that argument that our minds are needed for the thing to exist. Like, the thing is still there independent of your mind. Reality exists. The emergence of consciousness, for all we know, as all things point to, is kind of come after the fact. It is a byproduct of these relational behaviors. So you can't say that it's dependent on something when in fact the mind is dependent upon the relational behaviors for that instantiation, right? It seems almost backwards to me because relational behaviors aren't. So logic isn't informing relational behaviors. Relational behaviors are informing logic, exactly. And then the logic in turn informs us. I mean, it's as simple as that. And I want to say it one more time because nobody seems to understand this kind of concept. Relational behaviors inform logic, not logic informing relational behaviors. It is not an intrinsic property of that. Is that if that was the case, would we even? First off, would we have different ways of describing different sets of logic, like fuzzy logic, non-classical logic? No, we wouldn't even have these. People take for granted that classical logic is kind of like the de facto, but people don't realize that not everybody accepts that, because these are descriptive ways of describing the universe. I mean, that's part of that.
So he says that we prove this. Whatever.
No, we didn't prove any of your point.
What you say as far as you can differentiate things within a mind is true, and it's obviously the case. But that has nothing to do with God. All you need is a mind, our mind, to exist in the world and be able to categorize the world. That in no way gets you to the need for an external mind that you call God that comes before anything else. Because again, those things still exist.
It's backwards from his perspective, because he's using like if we're going to be consistent with your level of composition, right, and going, well, this is this. Well, you actually have it backwards, because the emergence of minds comes after the fact of these relational behaviors or of matter. So for you to now posit that a mind comes before that is, even on the basis of looking at it from the fallacious argument, which is of composition or division, if we're going to say that, you have it backwards. Like you have it entirely backwards. You wouldn't even have, based on that logic, the right to say that a mind comes before it, because everything indicates that this is a property that comes after the fact. Yeah. But that would be my thing there. So,
all right.
But yeah, anything else you guys want to mention or anything like that before we?
I think that if he wants to continue this conversation, he should email you right here.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, this way. And get his own show so that he can explain his his premise.
The last thing I'll say is this:
the email's on the damn screen, dude. I'm sorry.
Prophecies as an argument sucks in every single way. It fails in every single way. Anybody that wants to stand prophecies that they think proves their ideology, feel free to email us.
Do it in all caps in case he doesn't understand.
If it's not in all caps, he won't understand.
Yeah.
Premise 1, if you want to be important, you need all caps. Premise 2, all caps.
So conclusion, I don't understand lowercase.
I don't understand.
We'll bring you back. We'll bring you back in the future to do a show that's a little bit more in depth, like as far as specific prophecies. But for today, I just kind of wanted to get to more of the general.
Oh yeah, Mike, you'll love that book once you have time to read it, because it gives some specific examples, and some of them are just ludicrous. What are you looking for?
The book?
It's right above my head. I was just making sure it was.
Oh, so we'll revisit this prophecy problem in the future, I'm sure.
Yeah. Again, this one. Sorry if anyone was looking for kind of a specific breaking down specific prophecies. What we're gonna do, I'm gonna do multiple narration videos on that coming up in the 2021 year, because
thank God, let's get out of this year. Thank the pasta God that we're getting out of 2020.
Well, then, because if we don't, the rapture doesn't happen this year, I think I feel pretty safe, going forward with that.
I think it's going to happen in some time in the future. That's my specific prediction.
I'm wondering now if it was Spartan theology messing with us the whole time, but no, I don't know. That'd be funny if it was.
It has to be in all caps, or else it's not true.
Yeah.
If you want people to understand you, all caps.
Yeah. Well, hold on. This got me. I don't want to type that. Yeah. So if you do, just email us. Sorry. Me and Jeff get together and we just are like a giggle fest with this kind of stuff. So I apologize if we're getting off the trail here, but we will. We'll do another episode with the prophecies in regards to like very specific ones. And we actually have December. It was supposed to be December 2nd, but it's going to be December 10th now. Cease will be talking with Dr. D. Lockery, Worldviews. 3 of his buddies have reached out, so I wanted to give a thanks to Matt for suggesting that, because I've had, I think, 2 out of the 3 have reached out to me. So we're going to have a lot of theist guests coming on here soon. I will be having a conversation, I believe, with someone who she's an animal activist, but we're going to be talking about kind of like God sacrificing animals and how she reconciles that. And I told her in the email, I was like, I've never really taken this perspective, but I guess I'll be willing to try something new. So it'll be a kind of a veganism meets God sacrificing animals type of show. So we'll see how that goes.
Sounds good to me. That'll be fun.
Oh, and Gus, if you want his book list, just hang out with him, because every time I've gone over to his house, he's like, "Here, take this book. Oh, hey, take this book. Hey, read this book."
Oh, after I read it, what am I supposed to do with it?
I love it because I'm just like, this is the way to my heart right here. It's through books.
Again, and I buy a lot of Bart Ehrman used books and leave them at the little library, like give a book, take a book things around churches.
Oh, that's great.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
They're cheap. They're like $3-4. Like, help him sell some books.
That's amazing. I've been trying to reach out to Dr. Mark Goodacre, and I haven't reached out to Bart Ehrman yet because I feel like that'd be hard to do. But I wanted him to kind of come on the show, talk about some stuff like that, and I'm going to mention that to him if I ever.
Was he like a Ninja Turtle?
So.
He sounds like he's like a reject boy band. Like,
get my voice Slater.
Is he from like Home Improvement or something? What's going on here?
All right, we're gonna.
Who named their kid Slater?
We're gonna end the show on that. On that note, we're just gonna end the show. Thank you guys all for coming. I'm going to go to the other room and lock the door and hide from Slater because I'm petrified right now. So I love you guys. You guys be safe. Anything you guys want to mention before I start crying laughing? You guys go ahead and mention it, and I'll close out the show.
No, that's all. I think I have a few guests lined up as well. One is a progressive Christian who I'm interested in having a conversation with. Another one is a friend of mine who I would like to discuss anarchy with and more political philosophy. I think I'd be interested in. And I have another friend of mine who's a psychologist who has a really interesting perspective on things. So I'm going to try to set something up with him soon. So. As Mike is dying over there,
it's the picture, like it's his face, and it's like, "Yo, get my
Colonel
on here, and I'll destroy you." And it's this old little cute little man. Right,
can you imagine if that's really what he looked like, and was saying these things?
Oh man, I would just be like, "You win, God exists." You're adorable. Let me buy you some KFC, little man. All right, guys, have a good night. We love y'all. Peace.
Mandelbaum.
Sorry guys for my giggle fest on this episode. This was kind of just a fun little one we wanted to go through, but be sure to leave all your comments in all caps. Be sure to do that because I don't know how to read them otherwise. But thank you guys. We love you.